Okay, thank you for joining me, Homeschool Christian Mom Elizabeth Estel, and I'm talking today about how you can get your student to be an independent learner. So I was looking through my material today, and there is so much material about getting your student ready to do things independently. And thank you for joining me. I appreciate it so much. I see the love coming. Hi, Lindsay. And thank you for people who are watching it now and who will watch it later. So I have homeschooled for 22 years. I'm still involved with our homeschooling group. I was a leader in the state, and I've worked with teaching gym programs and all that. So I've done it. I have kids. I don't just have one kid. I didn't have my kids 20 years apart, so I just worked with one at a time. It was a lot of kids around trying to do this homeschooling, and I homeschooled K through 12th grade, and my kids have made a successful transition into college and life, and I'm really thankful for that. So what were some of the things I did to get them as independent learners? And one thing you have to really consider is, what are you looking for? Because if you're looking for a certain kind of behavior, you need to teach that behavior. So if you want them to get up at 8 o'clock and put on their own clothes and walk down to breakfast and sit at the table by 8:20 so they can eat their oatmeal, you're going to have to teach that and reward it when it happens, and do some kind of negative punishment for when it doesn't happen. It's supposed to be uncomfortable for them if something doesn't happen, but you've got to know what you're looking for as an independent worker. Like, what does that mean at your house? So when the kids were little, I wrote down a whole bunch of things that I wanted them to be able to do. Like, they needed to get dressed, they had to do their personal hygiene in the morning, and then come to the table for breakfast. They had to be done eating at a certain time so we get started for school. And it has to be age appropriate. You are probably, I would say 99% of you are not going to have an independent learner who is a first grader. That is not something that's going to happen, but they can have the steps. You can have the steps in place so that you move toward that over time. So you have to be age appropriate with your expectations. You have to be attentive to your student so that you know that they can do what you're asking to. Hi, Emily, glad you could join me. And then you have to be working forward with that. So I'm going to get my one list here. So for my daughter, who is in first grade, I had a list that she needs to follow established morning routines, including her personal hygiene and breakfast. She needed to be ready to begin school with her table cleared off and her shelf neatly arranged. So when she was starting school, she would have been 5. I would have had a 3-year-old and a baby under 1. So this was not something that was just her own little world. We had a lot of other things happening too. I wanted her to follow her school schedule without complaint. I mean, nobody wants to hear the complaining all day long every day. That's ridiculous. So complaining was not allowed about our school schedule. That got marked off. She needed to try new tasks with enthusiasm. During free time, she had to play in a kind manner, alone or with others. She cleaned up after her snack or lunchtime, and she washed her hands. She promptly returns when requested to continue her schoolwork. She follows directions, attempts new projects to the best of her ability, sits or works quietly while waiting for instructions or while the teacher is interacting with others in person or on the phone. So, like, these were high expectations, right, that I had for her. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see this. I had my great big list here, and then I had all these little dots. So during Bible class on Monday, there was a little dot by Bible. If she did all the things she was supposed to do during Bible class, the dot got filled in and she got a point for that. But if something happened during Bible class, I didn't just tell her, well, you were bad during Bible class, so you don't get your point. I could say, well, you didn't do number 7. 7 is promptly returns when requested to do schoolwork. And after you went to the bathroom, I had to come find you. You were upstairs playing with your toys and get you to come back downstairs. So I could tell my child specifically, this was what happened. This is what mommy didn't like. And this is what you can do better to earn your points. And I wanted all my children to work steadily at a job until it was completed. They didn't need to take 3 breaks during math. You start math, you sit there, and you finish math. I didn't want my children to interrupt, to ask questions directed at others. I wanted her to keep her hands to herself, doesn't bump into or disturb others who are working. Now, I did have a child who did this frequently just to change up the routine. And she did this all through junior high and high school. She would be sitting there nicely working at her desk, and then she'd get up, smack somebody, and take off running. And she'd go up the back stairs and up and over across, down the front stairs, and get back to her seat before the other child and be sitting there sweetly while I could hear the other children crashing around upstairs. Just to do that and mix things up a little bit. So you have to pay attention what's happening, because you'd say, what are those other kids running around for? Well, it was the first one who had really started it. One of my children especially had trouble holding their pencil correctly, so that was on the list. Sitting properly in a chair. I wanted them to take care of their school materials and accept correction graciously. So if you want something of your child specific to your household or your curriculum, you need to teach it. You need to model it. You need to show them this is what I'm expecting and be very, very specific. Now, if you have a special needs child, you probably know this already and you're very familiar with it. There's an example of how to zip up your coat, and it's working with a special needs child, and I think there's 32 steps to getting your jacket on and getting the zipper ready to zip it up. But that plan is a very good plan, even with what you would consider normal children, because everybody likes to have a good plan in place. And then they know, oh, I missed step number 3 or I missed step number 7, and they can correct that. But just to say, for the average child, the average first or second grader, I want you to be an independent learner and sit there and do all your schoolwork all day without help is unrealistic. Or I want you to behave. You need to know at your house what it means when you say, I want you to behave. And I used the illustration, I want you to clean your room. We had a list of 20 things that if they did this, their room was clean. So they had to have their bed made, and it had to be flat looking with not lumps under it. And the toys needed to be put in the appropriate places, and the games had to be put together, and their clothes had to be in the drawers properly, and the drawers had to be able to shut. And it was a whole list of things, what it meant when I said clean your room. Because when a kid says my room is clean, he means there's not mud dumped all over the floor. But when an adult says clean your room, well, that's a different story when an adult is saying clean your room. So you need to be very specific with your children on what you mean when you say things and what behavior is expected of them. Now, age appropriate for independent work, you're going to have to be attentive to your kids to know what best they can do at different ages. And you're going to have both positive and negative things that you do. So we had a point system, and if they were able to earn their points, they got to choose what their positive rewards were. And at one time, my children really loved getting to call their grandma on the phone all by themselves and talking to grandma. So that was a positive thing. Sometimes if they had gotten I think it was over 40 points during a week, we would have pizza on Friday because that was what they wanted. If they had to be reminded a lot, but they did finish all their work for the whole week, they could earn 45 minutes of computer time, or they could watch a show. We didn't allow a lot of TV time, so that was good because then it was a good positive reinforcement. If they finished 90% of their work for the week, they could still earn some positive things because you don't want to discourage your children. You want them to still be moving forward. If they finished 85% of their work, they could, with a good attitude, they could still earn some positive things. But if they didn't get enough work done, or they had a bad attitude, they could have no computer for fun, no friends over, and they had to choose, or I chose something else that was negative. They had to set the table for 4 meals. They had to do extra chores for mom. They had to do extra work for dad, depending on the severity of their attitude or the problem. But you have to stay right on top of it. And that is what is so hard because, okay, you're staying right on top of your first grader, right? So who's watching the 3-year-old and who's watching the baby? So baby gets carried around a lot on your hip. And the 3-year-old is sometimes in the playpen. And you say, what? 3-year-olds are too big for a playpen. But it was a safe place for the child. I had special toys that were only playpen toys. And that way I could concentrate for short bursts of time on that first grader. So the 3-year-old didn't mind being in the playpen because she got special toys at that time. She knew she was safe from my punishment. Or I had a small area where I had just activities for her. Now, I didn't have like a huge thing of toys, that 50 different toys she could dump on the floor, because I believe it's a lot better to have toys in a bag, like a 2-gallon bag. You play with the toys in the 2-gallon bag, 2-gallon closable bag. When you're finished, you put them back in the bag, zip it shut, and you get out the next zippered bag. So it prevented a lot of just chaotic mess at the house. And if you ever saw my house, you might not believe that was important to me, but it really was. I didn't want it to look crazy around here. We wanted to have some kind of order around here so that 15 minutes before my husband got home from work, we could say, okay, it's chore time, assign everybody a little spot, and we could get the house cleaned up in 15 minutes, looking pretty good before daddy got home. So with your independent learners, you have to know what your goals are for your children. You have to break those down into small steps, and then you have to have a schedule for your children. And I can post some of these on a Homeschool Christian Mom group. I don't know if you can, here we go. See, you can use a schedule like this where you have your time blocked out like this. This is a paper somebody else gave me, but blocking out time for different one of their children. So you have a schedule, you have what your goals are, and then you follow up on it, because a lot of people are like, well, you know, I told them to do it, but they didn't do it, and I didn't find out, and this and that. If you really want a certain behavior, you check behind them. No questions asked. They say, oh, you don't trust me. Look up you with their big eyes. You don't trust me, mommy. No, your job is to clean your room. Mommy's job is to check behind you. So you clean your room and do your job. Mommy checks behind you. If it's not clean, we'll talk about that. But you do not stop checking behind them. You know why? Because otherwise they're going to be learning to be deceitful, and you don't want that. You want to teach your children to tell the truth, that things are important enough to be checked up on. So if you want the behavior, you need to teach it, and you always need to check up on it. And that is the only way to do it. So homeschooling is a lot of work, and as Homeschool Christian Mom, I have done it. I know it's a lot of work. I want to be your personal cheerleader. If you think you need some more assistance, I do have a program where I will be your phone call support for 8 or 12 weeks with 20-minute phone calls every week. If you're interested in that, you can private message me, because I know it's hard, but you can do a really good job with your children and boost them ahead on the educational level by doing a good job at homeschooling and meeting their needs. Thanks for joining me. I hope you have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.